Welcome to our channel. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified whenever our new video comes out. The Government Inspector is a 5-act play by the Russian-Ukrainian author Nikolai Gogol, written by the end of 1935 in just 2 months. It was first performed at the Aleksandrovsky Theatre in St Petersburg on April 19, 1836. Set in a small isolated provincial Russia in the 1830s, it is a comedy of errors and the case of mistaken identity. The play is also known as The Inspector General, is based on an alleged tale told to Gogol by the poet Alexander Pushkin. Act 1 begins in the mayor's house, where the town's government officials, including the judge, the inspector of schools or the school superintendent, warden of charities, chief of police, and the district doctor, are having a meeting. The mayor informs that a government inspector is coming from St. Petersburg, but this inspector will be incognito with secret instructions to check out how things are going in their town. This news scares the officials terribly while the mayor panics and tells them to do whatever it takes to hide all the little indiscretions and corrupt stuff that's been happening in town for a long. Meanwhile, 2 local landowners named Bobchinsky and Dobchinsky burst in and tell everyone that a stranger from St. Petersburg came to town 2 weeks ago and has taken residence at the inn. The mayor rushes off to the inn, assuming this person as the inspector, while his wife, Anna, and daughter, Maria, are curious about the inspector. Act 2 takes place in a room at the inn, where a servant named Osip grumbles that his master named Klestikov is only 23 years old and works for the government as a low-grade officer. But he lost all his money gambling. Now, he can't pay for his 2 weeks of food and room at the inn. When the mayor shows up, Klestikov supposes he's getting arrested for not paying his inn bill, but the mayor, presuming Klestikov as the government inspector, offers to show him around town's administrative institutions and eventually requests Klestikov to stay at his house. Klestikov agrees, not knowing they've got him mixed up with someone else. Act 3 begins at the mayor's house, where his wife and 18-year-old daughter, Anna and Maria, are apprehensively waiting for the inspector to arrive. The mayor presents Klestikov a fancy meal and shows him the hospital along with other previously mentioned government officials. A drunk Klestikov rambles about his false elite lifestyle and enormous administrative power in St. Petersburg, figuring out that his hosts had mixed him up with someone much more important, all the while the impressed mayor and his cronies tremble in fear. Later, when Klestikov goes to his room for rest, Anna and Maria disagree about who he was flirting with. Upon being questioned by the mayor, Osip informs that his master likes warm hospitality and good food. In Act 4, the mayor tells all the town's officials to give Klestikov as much money as he wants, hoping that by bribing, Klestikov won't complain about them to the St. Petersburg's authorities. Klestikov takes full advantage of this by getting more and more money from each official. After they leave, he writes a letter to his friend Tyranny in St. Petersburg, bragging about all the money he got. Then some local merchants and townsfolk come to petition him about how corrupt and sneaky the mayor is. After bumping into Maria, he flirts with her, thinking her to be a tasty dish, and later with her mother in Maria's absence. But when Maria comes back and catches him, he suddenly proposes to marry her. The mayor at first doesn't believe Klestikov wants to marry his daughter, but he eventually agrees. Osip comes in and plans for Klestikov to leave town before the deception is found out. Klestikov tells the mayor's family that he's leaving for a few days but will come back to marry Maria. In Act 5, the mayor and his wife start daydreaming and boasting about flying high and how fancy their life will be in St. Petersburg once Maria marries the influential official. The mayor summons and harshly scolds the townsfolk who dared to petition against him to the supposed inspector. After news of the mayor's future prospects spreads, everyone arrives at the mayor's house to congratulate on his daughter's engagement to the high-ranking official, but secretly belittling him to be a puffed-up person. Amidst this, the postmaster arrives to spill the beans about Klestikov's deceit. Having opened and read Klestikov's letter to Tyranny, in which he ridiculed the officials and called the mayor as stupid as a mule, Klestikov fooled everyone into thinking he's the official inspector and swindled their money. The mayor feels like an idiot for thinking Klestikov was an illustrious personage. He asks everyone, "What are you laughing at? You're laughing at yourselves, that's what, for falling for the trick." Suddenly, a gendarme or the military police officer arrives to inform that the real government inspector was in town. The play ends with the mute scene in which everyone froze for a minute and a half, looking stunned and scared because the real inspector had shown up. This dramatic scene perhaps represents the metaphorical The Last Judgment portrait where everyone stands stiff on the verge of being held accountable for their sins and dishonesty. Also, the position of the characters facing the audience for so long is also a way of mirroring and highlighting the real-life corruption within the society. The play highlights the pervasive issues of bureaucratic corruption and political exploitation within the imperialist Russian government. Officials abuse their positions for personal gain. An example is when the postmaster illegally reads people's private sealed letters in search of any information that can be used for extortion or manipulation. This corrupt behavior not only serves as a source of comic relief but also sheds light on the systemic corruption inherent in the bureaucratic system. The mayor skillfully exploits the townspeople's fear of government authority to get free stuff from the store owners. He makes them believe that the government inspector is in town and engaged to his daughter, creating an atmosphere of panic and compliance. This fearmongering allows him to maintain his control over the town and extract financial favors from its residents. Systematic tyranny and social hierarchy are intertwined themes in this satirical play. The townspeople and officials unquestioningly defer to those in higher social positions or perceived authority. Klustakov's arrival as a potential government inspector represents this. He is immediately treated with reverence and deference, highlighting the rigid social hierarchy and the systematic oppression perpetuated by those in power. In The Government Inspector, human avarice and deception are central themes. The character's insatiable desire for personal gain and wealth is apparent throughout the play. For example, the town officials' reaction when they believe Klustakov is a government inspector is to immediately offer him extravagant bribes and lavish hospitality, to secure favor and avoid punishment. On the other hand, Klustakov poses as a government inspector to boldly solicit money and hospitality out of the sleazy officials and the poor petitioners for his own greedy interests. The play is replete with mistaken identities and false pretenses, which contribute to its comedic and satirical elements. Throughout the play, the characters engage in morally depraved and unethical behavior, such as bribery, deception, and manipulation, to safeguard their interests. The pervasive moral decay within the town is a biting commentary on the corrupting influence of power and the lengths to which individuals will go to preserve their status and avoid facing the consequences of their actions. Klustakov not only indulges in gambling, duplicitousness, fraud, but also openly flirts with both the mayor's wife and daughter. The mayor inspires fear and power over the merchants to extort free things, and those who dare to question his authority, such as the sergeant's widow, are flogged brutally. The judge takes bribes instead of delivering justice. Dobchinski has an extramarital affair with Dobchinski's wife and eavesdrops on the conversation between the mayor and Klustakov. The townsfolk have to give bribes to the supposed inspector to even have their petitions taken seriously. Self-preservation is a driving force behind many characters' actions, so they go to great lengths to protect their reputations and positions. For instance, the mayor and his associates strive to keep Klustakov in their good graces, fearing the consequences of displeasing a government official. The warden of charities goes a step further by ratting out all the professional corruption and unethical private affairs of his so-called friends and partners to the supposed inspector in a bid to save his own skin. Klustakov and Osip go along with the fraud when they discover that they are being mistaken for someone else. They attempt to gather as much money and favors as they could before running away in the end before their gig is up to not end up in prison.